The Gospels have frequent accounts of Jesus' miraculous healings. We hear a couple of them today. And in John's Gospel, John tells us that these are just a handful of the things that Jesus did, that there's lots of other ones that would fill plenty of books. But these are just a sample. But Jesus is never, I think, satisfied with simply healing somebody. He's not just a great physician who everybody went to and said, go to that guy, because he'll make you well. Because if he was simply a great physician, then we wouldn't be here today. He's more than a miracle worker. And all of his healings are probably remembered because they do more than simply heal. There's also a teaching going on even in the midst of the healing, because Jesus is aiming at something deeper than physical health. These two we hear today are a little bit unique in the Gospels. We hear this story of the woman who's been ill for 12 years. For 12 years, she's had a hemorrhage. She's gone to doctors. She's exhausted her savings. She's at the point of poverty because she's not been able to get well. And in Jewish ritual law, because she was hemorrhaging, she was considered unclean. So she must have had to adjust her life tremendously. She would not have been able to touch anybody else. If she touched them, then they became ritually unclean. She herself could not go to the synagogue or to the temple because she was ritually unclean because of her illness. She couldn't even go to the market and pick up an orange or an apple or something to look at because the fruit became unclean by her touching it. If she bumped up against anybody in the market, they became unclean. She would not have been able to be with her family, not have been able to visit friends, not be able to go to anybody's house, not be able to go to a coffee shop, nothing. And she probably learned to walk differently, to pull herself in so that she was smaller, so she would not have hurt anybody else. 12 years she did that. And then she heard there was somebody who might be able to heal her after she had gone to every other doctor. So she secretly touches him. Here's where Jesus could have let it go. If he was only interested in healing, he could have let it go. He could have just kept walking. And she was healed. Her life was better. But Jesus is interested in something else. So he does that little comedy routine with the disciples. Who touched me? And they're like, hey, Jesus, this is just like after the College World Series. Everybody's leaving the stadium all at once. They're all kind of pushing and shoving and trying to get out. And you're saying, who touched me? Yeah, who touched me? Come on, Jesus. Everybody's touching you. What do you mean? And she knows. She knows exactly. And so he calls her forth. She admits the truth. She steps forward and says, me. I did it. And then he does something that changes her. He calls her daughter. 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 Your faith has made you whole. Daughter. She who had been away from God, away from people, away from everyone, is raised up and made different by a name. Daughter. In doing that, he also changes the crowd. Because the crowd, once they saw who it was probably expecting something entirely different in that conversation. The crowd had adapted that crowd attitude when it comes to someone who you can't help. You know, that person who's just always there and you've tried to help them over the years and they don't get any better, like homeless people. You know, they're still asking for help and you just learn to walk around them even more because no, what good is it going to do? You know, who tried helping? The crowd attitude. Jesus changes the crowd attitude when he raises her up. He transforms them too, to have them see her different than they saw her before, so that they can become the people they are supposed to be, rather than simply the crowd that doesn't care. He transforms the crowd in the other group too, you notice. Because when he comes to heal the 12-year-old girl, to raise her, they are sure she's dead. And they are doing all the dead stuff, the things that needed to be done for grieving. And they are certain they need to move forward with that. And he says, you're wrong. You don't see correctly. You don't know what's happening here. Get out. He removes the crowd so that he can have an encounter with a young woman and transform her too. To call her by a new name. There's a message there, my friends, for you and I these many years later that Jesus wants us to hear. Not just that he was a miracle worker, but that you and I, his body today, are to still be for the world who Jesus is. Somebody who sees people that others do not see. Somebody who is willing to touch that which was untouchable. Somebody who's willing to give a new name, where a new name can transform them. You and I are invited to be for those people Jesus, to invite them to arrive.